For more in-depth perspectives and interesting stories, sign up for our daily newsletter at tvo.org/daily.
How to describe our next guest? Well, he once hosted this country's equivalent of the Johnny Carson Show. He was a stand-up comedian at Yuck Yucks when Howie Mandel and Jim Carrey were there. He's been a journalist, documentary filmmaker, advisor to 2 different political parties, advisor to an Ontario college president. And now, thanks in part to some frightening developments in his health over the years, he's become a rabbi. But he hastens to add, not that kind of rabbi. He's here tonight because he summed up his eclectic life story in a new book called I Thought He Was Dead, a spiritual memoir. And we're delighted that it brings Ralph Ben-Mergui to our airwaves tonight from Hamilton, Ontario. Hello, Raphael. How you doing?
I am fine, sir. How are you?
That was not a bad intro, wouldn't you say?
Listen, it's like, your eulogy. You're there for it. It's a good thing.
Let's just acknowledge off the top, you and I have been friends for 30 years. We've known each other a long time. I think we're good friends. But there were things I read in this book that were a real revelation to me. And, well, let's just go here off the top. You're on a table. You've had an angiogram. You got a doctor who tells you got 95% blockage in a few arteries to your heart. What goes through your head at a moment like that?
It was such a strange experience because we have this idea that we're alive and we're going to be alive, and bad things, death happens to other people. It's almost like you have to think that when you get up in the morning, or else you don't really know what to do with your sense of purpose. But that was a moment where it was just like, okay, as I watched them actually blow open the arteries and the tree of your heart, of the arterial map of your heart just burst open and everything gets blacker and more interesting, I just felt relieved, but I'd also been very frightened. I mean, when they were trying to look for the vein on my hand to put the IV in, the woman said, you're constricted. Maybe you're a little tense. And I said, do you think? Yeah, just a little tense. But it was a part of a whole process of, oh, I get it, mortality. Let's start looking at that.
Well, you did ask the question which everybody asks, which is, why me? What answer did you come up with?
It's nothing personal, right? I mean, I had a cardiac test at one point afterwards where they put a whole bunch of stuff on you and you do on a treadmill to see how you're doing. And I did ask, hey, why me? And the woman said, what's your cardiac history in your family? And I just reamed off everybody in my family having heart disease. And she said, okay, so, try not to be too hard on yourself. But as I say in the book, I almost took it as, okay, well then I have nothing to learn from this. I'm fine. And that was a bad idea because there was more to come and there was lots to learn.
Well, in fact, I do remember well when you had sciatica and you had such pain and you had difficulty walking. And you say in the book that through that pain, you gained humility. And the question is, did you need to gain humility?
Yes, I think we all need to gain and humility, by the way, something I've learned in the spiritual counseling work I do with people. Humility is not, deferring. Don't mind me, little old me, I'm fine. Humility is knowing what place to inhabit in your life at any given moment. Sometimes you need to lead. Sometimes you need to just be quiet and follow. And humility is just finding a way to readjust yourself so that you don't have to either go big or go small or any of those things, but just say, what's needed from me right now about me and myself, me and other people, and me and my purpose in this world.
Ralph, how old were you when your father died?
Geez, I was 33. I was working at midday at CBC television. When he died. I was 30 when he got ill, and I was out in Winnipeg doing some CBC, but 33 when he died, yeah.
And how old was he?
I'd never seen someone die before.
Huh.
He was 68, and 3 days before his retirement, he had a massive stroke, and for 3 years, he just went downhill. And, when I was writing about this, it was something that it's hard to sort of write through the tears, but they phoned me from the hospital and said, your father's passed away. And I said, oh, it's not like I hadn't expected it. But I went down there and I looked at him and I realized I'd never seen someone who was dead before in my life. And this was my father. And he was parts of him were warm and parts of him had already become cold. And I sat with him and I looked at him. And the one thing I realized there, for me, was he's not there anymore. This isn't him. His soul had left. I truly believed in my soul and that we have one after that experience, because looking at him, I realized, as Ram Dass says, it's just a spacesuit with your name on it. It's a mortal coil, as Shakespeare calls it.
Well, one of the things I'm getting at here, too, is that you're not that far from 68, and I wonder whether or not this has, his relatively young death has, I don't know, influenced, maybe haunted you through the course of your life, that you think, I don't have much time, I got to get a lot done?
No, I've heard that story from a lot of people. I'm not one of them. I don't think if it happened to him, it has to happen to me. But I've always had a sense that we really shouldn't take for granted that this isn't a rehearsal. This is our life. And we should try to do something good with it and something meaningful. And we should try to become better at it. It's kind of the ability to refine that soul I was talking about. Try to make it a little better, improve a little bit on what you started with. But I've never really thought, well, you're doomed. On the other hand, I've never thought, oh, you're supposed. I do spiritual workshops with people on aging. And, when I ask them to write their own obituary, which is rather shocking for them to do, they usually say they lived to 97, died peacefully with their family around them and their loved ones. And I just say, at 97, what's life? Do you have a spouse? Are your friends still alive? Is it really physically easy to be 97? It's not for sissies getting older.
Right? Oh, I hear that all the time. Now, we've talked about your heart blockage. We've talked about the sciatica. Then one day you look in the mirror and the septum in your nose has collapsed, and then you got a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
Okay, let me do an excerpt from the book here, and then we'll come back and chat. My nose was shrunken and malformed, my cheekbones an almost purple hue, and my eyebrows bleached and mostly gone. Over the next few years, I had more reconstruction of my nose, and eventually my normal color returned, but I will always look different. The person I was, as I stood in front of the television cameras as a host of variety and current affairs programs for Canada's public broadcaster, was gone. The challenge was letting go of that version of myself. Given how different you look, Ralph, did you still think you were you?
Well, it's a journey of self-acceptance. I remember the surgeon saying, I can do this, I can do that, I can give you Botox every 4 months. And I said, I got to learn how to live with this being me. But when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, up until I was a late teenager, I was quite heavy. And then I lost a lot of weight, and all of a sudden I was thin, and I had a jawline and cheekbones, and women talked to me before they talked to me about guys they liked. Now they actually talk to me. And I had to accept that person was not the same person I'd been. And then when this happened, I had to accept it again. And it's kind of a Buddhist meditation, really, on just impermanence, that we think we are a solid object. I am Ralph Benmergui. I drink white wine, not red wine. I do this, I don't do that. And so it's important that these things are reminders that it's all impermanent. Everything is a rental. Just try to enjoy it while you're here.
We are going to talk about the spiritual journey that you've been on a little more and the rabbinical work that you do. But before we get there, I do want to ask whether you think you would be as spiritual as you now are had you not had so many death-defying episodes in your life along the way.
Well, it's a good question because, I grew up in a traditional home. We came from Morocco, and the kind of Judaism I come from wasn't one where you could be Reform, conservative, Orthodox, you were just in or out. And we were in. And it shaped me as a person. And, in my late teens and up to my, mid to late 20s, I had pepperoni pizzas. I hung out. I didn't care. And then I returned. Even when I was starting out as a broadcaster in my late 20s, I did return to my spiritual root through my religion. Because the way I see it is your spirituality is your relationship issue to yourself, to other people, and to the world. But religion is kind of like a fitness program, right? Like a Sabbath is a Sabbath for somebody who observes it. You don't go, I don't know, maybe not this week. You do it. And if you want a six-pack in the gym, you got to go to the gym. You can't just go to the gym and look at everybody else and go, well, I wish I was in shape. So there are things that can help us to get in shape. And I think I always clung to those throughout my life. So I would say with or without this, my spiritual journey was there no matter what I was doing. When I was doing Friday night, I actually thought to myself, I shouldn't be doing this on a Friday night. And I thought, wow, that's weird. I didn't realize I'd think that. When I was doing midday, I thought, what if I showed up one day with a kippa on, with a skull cap, and just sat in the host chair? What would they do? Oh my God, what is he doing? Why is he wearing that? Oh, what are we going to? He can't do any Israel interviews. You know, he's on a team. But, you know, we're all on our teams. It's just, if you make it visible, it becomes an interesting thing. But those urges were always in me, if that's the question. Friday
night, I would just remind those who don't remember, it was the Johnny Carson Lake Show that you did. Boy, how many years ago was that now? It's got to be almost 30.
It's 92, I guess. We
almost 30. There we go.
Yeah.
How about that? All right. I mentioned in the intro that you have advised two different political parties, the Liberals and the Greens. And you wrote something about politics in your book that is really quite tough, and I want to read it here. You wrote, I still advise politicians I respect when asked, but when I left Queen's Park, I looked back over my shoulder, and what I saw was a broken system of male patriarchy, adversarial gridlock, and a profound tone of deafness to the society that was struggling around them. Pink Palace indeed. You write there, referring to the nickname of Queen's Park. I'm sure there's a lot of people who agree with that assessment of the place. Do you think there's any remote chance anything can be done about that?
Under the present parliamentary system in which we exist, I don't see how. You know, I was always amazed by, put it this way, if I said this in a marriage, the marriage would be over in 10 minutes. I am absolutely right, and you are absolutely wrong on everything. That's just an absurd way to go about the business of helping people to have a better society. And I think that neoliberalism has done a lot to encourage that. That whole idea of, you know, what Thatcher said, there is no society. There are just men and women and families, and that's it. So the collective is not the point. Power is the point. And how you know, you can watch it in a political party when they have the scent of power in their nostrils, how everything changes for the people within that group. And the kind of tribalism and binary notions that were flying around that building, I just thought, we should be sitting in a circle here. We should not be sitting staring at each other, yelling over a floor, heckling and behaving. You know, when high school kids would come to watch, I'd be embarrassed to see, my God, this is what they see, a bunch of grown people yelling at each other to drown each other out. I mean, what is that? And when I think of the way we convene, we're on the wrong track. We're not seeing each other as having a valid contribution, having committees, not where I score points, but where we learn from each other. So for me, I couldn't help but feel that two things. One is that everybody in Queen's Park thinks that that's the whole world. And then the second you walk out 2 blocks away from Wellesley and Bay, nobody cares about what you're talking about in there because you're not really listening to them. People yearn for having an affordable life, a meaningful life, a sense of belonging to something, a community, and they're not getting it from that. They're getting a bunch of patriarchal relationships. I mean, when I watch women trying to succeed, when I watch what happened to Kathleen Wynne as a premier and the kind of vitriol that went her way, I just thought, what is that? Why are we doing that to each other? Why do we talk like this? You know, talk like a person, as my mother would say.
Well, that does take me to your podcast because you do offer a lot of life lessons and a lot of, I would say, very helpful, very fascinating spiritual conversation on your podcast, which is called Not That Kind of Rabbi. And you start every episode by saying, I'm a rabbi, but I'm not that kind of rabbi. What do you mean by that?
What I say is I'm not a rabbi. I'm an ordained spiritual director, so I do spiritual counseling. But if I was a rabbi, I wouldn't be that kind of rabbi.
That's it.
In other words, I wouldn't stand there on the bema, as it's called, at the pulpit and, guide people as a sage. I think we need more, whenever you've done a town hall and somebody says, I have a question, and then they stand up and they talk, they have an opinion for quite a while. And as hosts, we think, oh my, we got to get them off this. But I also realized they have no voice. They finally get to say something that matters to them. So in Not That Kind of Rabbi, I try to talk to people about where they come from spiritually. It's something we never talk about. It's considered naive. I had to sit beside Richard Dawkins at a dinner once, the atheist, and he looked at me and he just said, "You actually believe in these things, these fairy tales?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I'll ignore the fact that you just insulted me, but I would say that your orthodoxy of atheism, a profound belief that there is just the science of life, isn't enough for me. I think we live in a mystery. When you walk through a forest, you get the cosmic joke. You're in on it. But when you sit there and think that everything is explainable, like what's going to happen to us when we die, just relax, enjoy it. Cultivate your spiritual life and make yourself available to put it this way. I work with a lot of Greens. I'm a strategic consultant to Green parties. And one of the things that really has upset me over the years is why can't they hear this? And I just think we've commodified everything to the point where there is no spiritual, communal essence to things. So we're willing to extract everything we can from resources and from people, but we're not able to turn to each other and go, what do the Hindus say? We say, hey, how's it going, eh? They say, namaste. I salute the God within you. Could you imagine a society like this walking around saying, God isn't the word you're supposed to say? And we've become God. We are now the ones who control the destiny. And we're not doing a great job. We're really bad at it. So I like trying to get people through Not That Kind of Rabbi, through spiritual counseling, through this book. I like to get people to start thinking about those things when they start dealing with each other and not just put on their armor and go in for a fight.
There's a wonderful story you tell in the book, and the scene, I guess I'll set the scene a little bit here. It's the Stephen Colbert Show, the late night show on CBS, and he's got Keanu Reeves, I guess he's Canadian, isn't he? Yeah, the Canadian actor, very famous guy, and he asks Keanu Reeves this question. He says, let me ask you, what happens to us when we die, Keanu Reeves? And the audience, hip to the persona Reeves has cultivated over the years, roared with laughter, waiting for a Matrix-like answer. Reeves took a deep breath and answered, I know that the ones who love us will miss us. What do you love about that answer?
Everything, because they were looking for, let's have some fun here. And the guy, you can think whatever you want of his acting ability, but he's a sincere human being. And he said what was really the truth. Like when I was doing 9 to 5, pounded out daily show work, and then I'd be leaving, and you're leaving? Why aren't you staying? And I'd just go, I got to go home because there's people there that I really hope when I'm going that they want to be in the room with me and they want to love me because I love them. And you guys are great, and I love working with you. But the minute I stop working here, it's over because it's all about proximity. So what I love about his quote is that's what we want. Who doesn't want people to, after at a funeral, not turn to the other person and go, he was okay. What's the eat? It's not what you want to hear. You want to hear, you know what, I'm going to miss that person. Not because I'm great, but because you meant something to them and you try to mean something to them, right?
Well, I'm glad you're being funny now because this is going to dovetail us nicely for the last segment here. And that is, okay, humor me for a second. How many years older than your wonderful wife are you?
16.
16 years. Okay, last excerpt from the book. Here we go. What I usually tell her is, listen, after I die, I seriously don't want you to find someone else. As a matter of fact, even though I will be buried, as is custom in the Jewish faith, I want you to get an urn, a decoy urn, as it were. Put a big plaque on the front that just says Ralph, and put it on the mantelpiece so that any potential suitors can look up and experience an immediate buzzkill. You're laughing. You wrote it. Ralph, were you ever worried that the more spiritual you got, the less funny you might get? Because I got to tell you, I don't think you needed to worry about that if that paragraph's any indication.
No. You see, this is the thing, right? If you talk about spiritual life, people think you're supposed to flow through the room with robes on and everything's great. you're in bliss. Spirituality is messy, clumsy. I don't know how many clerics I've spoken with and done workshops with where I said, how are you with getting it on with this God idea? And they say, it comes and goes. Sometimes I feel it and sometimes I don't. It's not about certainty. The Chinese saying, to be uncertain is confusing. To be certain is ridiculous. Spirituality is about at least trying to weave something into your life that isn't about the material positioning of you as a person. How am I doing? How am I looking? How am I feeling? You got to have fun. People who don't have fun are missing something that is essential to spiritual life, which is joy.
Let's finish up with this all-important question. How's your health now?
It's good. I have to push myself to exercise as much as I'll never exercise as much as my wife, but I have to push myself to actually keep going and keep exercising. And yeah, I'm fine. I just have things to look at and go, okay, well, if you want to do that, then, I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for a long time. So for me, it's just trying to take care of the little things and making sure that I still have a 12-year-old at home and a 15-year-old at home. And I have a 35-year-old and a 32-year-old. So, I say in the book, when people say, oh, it keeps you young, it doesn't keep you young. It almost kills you. It's just that you don't want to die because you don't want to let them down. So they're my incentive program.
Your life has turned out just the way you planned, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm very glad you're still alive, even though the title of your book is I Thought He Was Dead. It's a wonderful spiritual memoir, and we're really glad that it has brought the great Ralph Ben-Murgy to our airwaves tonight. Thanks, Ralph, and be well.
Thanks, Steve. Take care of yourself.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.